Hi, beautiful beings. We are back here for day 18 of 21 Days of Fear, where I have been going live for the last 17 days, give or take, talking about all the ways that fear shows up in our lives that we might not be aware are fears. So today, gosh, we're getting into the last, 4 days now. So we're going to be getting into like the heart of it. And today's talk is about how fear is anything that takes us away from truth with a capital T. And truth with a capital T is the wisdom and pure love of our soul. So a lot of times, and this talk is coming from like a lot of times experiencing people say, I don't have any fears. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm not afraid of XYZ, all the things, right? So when we have this belief that I am not afraid of anything, we're not operating from what is truth, because fear is essentially anything that distorts the field. Because there are essentially two core energies that exist within this plane that we're on. Those core energies being love and fear, light and the absence of light, right? So we're working into this world where that is at the core, all that everything is, right? So we either have love and truth, which is the purity of our soul, or we have fear, and fear distorts that purity, right? It takes us away from truth. So essentially, fear is not only these alchemical experiences that we have of anxiety and stress and fight or flight. Fear is also anything that distorts our reality and brings us away from our truth, right? So when we talk about, having anxiety over what's happening at work, or feeling stressed out about a relationship, or those thoughts that like run over and over in the mind about all the things that could possibly be happening, or all the things that could be going on in life and relationship and love and money and sex and food and diets and all the things, all those chattery thoughts of the mind, those are all of them fear. Because fear is anything that distorts our purity and that essentially clouds the lens of our soul of love, which is truth, which is all knowing, right? This is very important, because when we don't acknowledge what actually is fear, we can be backpedaling, continuing to say, I don't have any fears, so I don't have any work that I need to be doing on myself. I'm all groovy. And yet then there's sleepless nights, and there's binge eating or binge drinking, or maybe the opposite of that, going into such abstinence I can't have anything because of the temptations. That we must recognize fear is more than just this, like, oh, I'm afraid to die, or oh, I'm afraid of sharks, or I'm afraid of heights, or oh, I'm afraid of flying, or whatever it is, right? All the things that our mind immediately goes to when we start talking about fear. When we start to see fear for what it is, which is anything that takes us away from truth, truth being the wisdom and pure love of our soul, we start to recognize the patterns that are showing up in our life that are not truth, right? An example of this could be any thoughts that you're unworthy. This is not truth. This is not the love and light of our soul, which is eternal worth. Any thoughts that there isn't enough, right? This would be not true. The true nature of the universe is that it's unlimited, all providing, infinite. So that would be an example of fear. taking us away from our truth, right? So we start to see that anything that is out of purity, out of integrity with our soul, that which is truth with a capital T. I'm really big on understanding the difference between lowercase t and capital T, right? Lowercase t is the quest of knowledge. I need to know the truth, and it seeks in the external for validation and wisdom and knowledge, right? I need to study and learn and get all the things. Whereas truth with a capital T is the all-knowing truth of our soul that gets all the information from the internal compass. And it is wisdom, right? It is wisdom, which is the embodiment, that it's the information that surges from within us as we open ourselves up to the miraculous love and light of our soul through the processing and integrating of everything that clouds that light, which is all fear. So when we're really looking at these dynamics in our lives, there's so much that we can be, pinpointing. And I am a huge advocate to be meticulously observing your life and observing your reality every single second and moment of your existence. Be meticulously witnessing all that's happening, right? Witnessing the sensations of your body, the thoughts, the emotions, the feelings, witnessing every single micro detail of what's happening in your environment around you. And I know you're thinking, oh, that sounds exhausting. Or how can I possibly be aware of all of that simultaneously? And I just encourage you to shift, because that's, oh, it sounds exhausting, or that, how would I ever be able to manage all of that and be so super aware at all times? I can barely be aware of these few things that I have to juggle in my email inbox, or whatever it is, right? That very thinking is fear, right? It's fear showing up and limiting your infinite nature. This is so important for our capacity to heal, because the path of true healing with a capital T is actually a path of rebuilding and recreating and rebirthing our entire existence. Because the moment that we pick up a traumatic imprint, whether that trauma is something that is big and bold, like war or rape or incest or, all the things, murder, or that trauma is as simple as you were unable to cry as a baby and essentially let people know that you needed something, which might actually have been, this is something that's so ripe in my field right now. So essentially, we go even deeper when we start to get into our hind brain, into the lower reptilian part of our brain. And I keep going like this because it's literally put in the backside of our brain, whereas our cortex and our cerebral functionings are in the front of our brain. So our hind brain, right, our medulla, our pons, our midbrain, these parts of our brain that are formulated in the first 14 months of our existence and back into the womb as well, up until those first 14 months. If we had any trauma coming into the world, which I'm going to be real with you, the vast majority of us have birthing trauma, because hello, we're trying to take a body and bring it through a vagina out into the world. And depending on that body and on the things that happening, maybe you came in too fast or too slow. Maybe there was too much constriction. Maybe it was too this, too that. Maybe we just were coming in from these experiences and we came into this world and it was like full on, right? So birthing is traumatic. I mean, just think about the process and think about being fully conscious in that process, right? There is a lot of stuff that happens in that process that creates the foundations of our medulla, right? And then our pons, these very formative pieces of our brain. And if you have not watched the video, What is Fear and How to Stop It from Controlling Your Life, please go and watch that video and learn all of the things about your brain, because it's so important. And you can find that video right now on my YouTube page at Rainbow Jones. It's in the Fearlessly Expressed video playlist, right? Go watch that video, because it talks about the reticulating activating system of our brain, which is what filters our whole reality and has us see only scarcity, or only dogs that bite, or only this type of person that, you know, does these things to children, right? It filters our reality and shows us what we want to see based on our beliefs. And that part of our brain is in our medulla and our pons. Right? So we're going all the way back to before we were born, in our mother's womb, and through the birthing canal, and then into the first 14 months of our life, that we're picking up these programs, right? So these programs are not being picked up from context, they're not being picked up cerebrally, they're not being picked up from words or from reading and writing and all those things. They're being picked up energetically and physically from our environment. So if there was a time when you know, my mother told me that I barely cried the first 2 years of my life. Didn't cry. And that was actually thought of me being a good baby, right? Very low maintenance, just slept all day, didn't really cry much. Well, in my journey of healing my trauma and the traumatic brain injuries, I've been on this like really deep path of understanding every single thing about the brain. And in those moments, what was actually happening was the pons of my brain was not developing, and there was no ability to cry out and express my needs. So even some things that we might think of as, oh, this is such a good baby, they're very low maintenance, they don't cry, they don't really bother me, they're just kind of sleeping, and they let me know when they're hungry and all that, that actually can be a trauma, because there's something happening where that baby is unable to cry out. So when we hear this word trauma, and I've said this before, we want to just automatically go to the things that are like really extreme, because then we can say, okay, well, nothing that extreme has happened to me, so I can just push through this stress or push through this anxiety, you know, and we actually disempower ourselves, and we belittle our own pains and the areas that we're struggling and the things that are happening in our lives. We start accepting our suffering, we start accepting chronic pain and accepting chronic depression, which is not something to be accepted. So I like to really break down this word of trauma. It's not only these, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder or, you know, rape and all these things that are very extreme. It can be the simplest thing of you were not able to cry when you needed to cry as a child and didn't receive as much cuddles because you just weren't crying and people thought you were a great baby. That actually goes in and it shapes your pons and it shapes your reticulating activating system, and it creates it so that you're no longer able to actually communicate what you need to survive, which is why a lot of people who have trauma, no matter how big or small it is, really struggle with their ability to financially provide for themselves, because the pons is where our needs get met. And if we have programs from our birthing experience, from those first years of our life when we were developing this part of our brain that say, all this world is not safe, that keep our nervous system in fight, flight, or freeze. It also controls our nervous system. So if we're not going in and effectively changing our pons and creating new neural pathways in this part of our brain, it's going to be very, very difficult to actually reset the nervous system to get it so that we come back into balance. Instead of the go, 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 sympathetic, living on edge world that the vast majority of humans have been living in. And how do we know that? If you're looking for, if that cognitive part of you that has become overdeveloped, and this is what's happened, we have overdeveloped our cerebral functions to accommodate for the amount of trauma that has been passed on from generation to generation to generation from the birthing process, that has essentially said, okay, our reptilian brain is just like not really functioning properly. There's just so much trauma that keeps getting passed forward. And instead of looking at this because we don't really know what to do, we're just going to seek for knowledge. We're just going to develop our cerebral functions. We're going to develop our cortex, and we're just going to pretend like all that's not there, and we're just going to accept a life where our needs aren't being fully met, where we're living in constant stress and anxiety, where we're living in fight or flight, where we're not having proper relationship dynamics with our loves because we're constantly in this internal world where we think people are going to abandon us or not love us fully, and all the things that are happening that is simply neural pathways that were not connected in our hind brain in the first primitive time of our life before we even took our first breath in our mother's womb. So when we're talking about fear and we're talking about trauma, we're not just talking about the things that are obvious traumas, that are obvious fears. We're talking about anything that takes us away from our truth. Truth with a capital T, that which is wisdom and pure love, pure potential, infinite expression, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, right? All knowing, always present, everywhere simultaneously in one. Truth. And in order for us to shift into a paradigm where we're no longer being governed by fear, which is absolutely essential for the world of peace that is wanting so badly to be birthed through all of us. You know, no matter what people's political thoughts are, or what their social economic status is, or what their religious ideology is, or what their beliefs are, deep in the core of every single living being is a desire for peace, freedom, and sovereignty. And a need right now is being awakened by Mother Earth herself that is saying, humanity, get your shit together. Right? Because if you keep being at war with yourselves, if you keep being at war with the planet, if you keep being at war with all of the existence that is, you're going to self-destruct. So peace is on the agenda, right, of the whole entire planet and of our entire species. And that peace comes through healing internally, through unplugging all of the programs that say scarcity, doubt, unworthiness, insufficiency, not beautiful, not smart, all the things that take us away from truth, that are simply fears that are clouding the field from us being able to know truth and to come on our own journey of healing, to step into peace. I keep saying this because it feels in the core of my being like the most important thing that I could say to humanity right now is that your healing heals the entire planet. It is the only purpose that each of us have right now. Heal. All of the beauty, all of the heaven on earth, all of the 5D, whatever you want to call it, the world of peace comes through our healing. And as each and every one of us go in and heal the ancestral trauma that has been passed on from birth, every single being on this planet is born the same way, is conceived the same way. And this information has just continued to be passed forward until those of us who are ready and willing and brave to say, I see this world's pain and I see it as my own. And all of this trauma and all the fear and all the ways that I have bought into this paradigm of fear and war and violence and separation and delusions of scarcity and all the things that are creating mass suffering, billions of people suffering. I acknowledge my role in showing up to heal, because it will heal the world. It will heal the collective. As I heal, we all heal. So with that being said, fear is anything that takes us away from truth. Truth is the wisdom and pure love of our soul. So anything that distorts our reality, that has us believing that we are in any way limited, that we don't have enough, that we are not enough, that things aren't going to work out for us, that this world is not going to heal, that peace is not going to be known, that we are not divine creatures of the miraculous one. Any of it is fear. And all of it has got to go if we are going to see the awakening of a world of peace. Peace happens one by one as we all show up to literally rebirth ourselves, rebuild our bodies, create new pathways in our brain, bring balance to our nervous system and endocrine system, harmonize our gut, so that we can heal and step forward without all of the generations of trauma that have just continued to be passed forward. That is all I have for you today, beautiful, miraculous ones. Tomorrow is day 19 of 21 Days of Fear. If you are just tuning in today for the first day, there are 17 videos that have come before this one. You can find them on my IGTV, you can find them on YouTube at Rainbow Jones, or you can find them on my Facebook page if you go to the videos tab. I highly encourage you, if you have resonated at all with this video, to share it on your Instagram stories, to tag your friends on Facebook, or share it to your feed so that more people can get tuned into these videos and the happenings so we together can create a world of peace. I love you all so much. I am Hamna. I will see you tomorrow for day 19. Bye.